What is up, everybody? Thursday night. I almost said Wednesday night, but it is Thursday. We are bringing you one jam-packed episode of Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast this week, brought to you, as always, by Tops Markets. Have you heard about the King's Hawaiian Slider Sunday $1 million showdown? Enter for a chance to win $1 million. Each week, King's Hawaiian is pitting two city sliders against each other in the ultimate showdown, and you get to help decide the winner. Vote weekly for your favorite regional slider for a chance to win all season long and earn entries toward the $1 million prize. Explore the interactive stadium to play games, get recipes, share photos, and more. Visit topsmarkets.com/redzone to enter right now. What is up, Ryan Talbot?
Hey, not too much. Watching a little Thursday night football, chatting Bills Ravens. I'm ready for it, Mr. Parrino.
That's what a couple of people said. They were like, "Wow, you guys don't want to watch the game?" I was like, "Yeah, but this could kind of be like a real time game companion, right?" I always watch the Joe Rogan Fight Companions when he's not at a pay-per-view, and I always think it's fun. So we can react in real time to this Miami Dolphins game. Which, by the way, if you're not watching it, couple of really questionable throws from Tua Tagovailoa here early on in this game. The first one on the interception to Tyreek Hill. I get the idea. You could see that Tyreek Hill was kind of breaking open, but underthrew him by quite a bit. Tyreek Hill had to kind of slow down. So kind of not a great start for this Miami offense.
Yeah, no, they've been limited to 2 field goals. When the plays have been on schedule and on time, Tua is delivering the ball, but it's when he has to improvise. It seems like that's when he's struggling. Looked like he put a lot into that deep ball that got intercepted. Threw one into the end zone in the last drive to pretty much nobody. But kudos to the Bengals for holding up here, and kudos to Miami's defense as well. They had a 4th down stop in this game after giving up a touchdown early. So it's been a pretty good matchup, Matt.
This is the Buffalo Bills football podcast Shout. So we're going to get to the topics at hand. We'll follow the action along, but it's going to be great because at halftime of the Thursday night football game, former Buffalo Bills superstar. I don't think he'd call himself a superstar, but Ross Tucker has his own podcast, has become one of the premier NFL analysts in the game today. He is going to join us to talk about this Bills 2-1 start, talk a little bit about this Sunday's game against the Baltimore Ravens, which, by the way, stick around for after Ross, and we'll give you our brief preview and predictions as well. But I think we should start, Ryan Talbot, with something that kind of became a talking point today with Gabe Davis missing practice after being full yesterday. It's a concerning situation because the Bills are kind of banged up at the position right now. Jake Kumerow got injured last week. He hasn't practiced yet all week. It's probably going to be a little bit longer for him to make his way back. So if the Bills don't have Kumerow and they don't have Davis potentially on Sunday, seem to maybe have re-aggravated that ankle injury, that creates a real problem in terms of depth. I know that there's some options on the depth chart. I mean, we've talked about Khalil Shakir all summer and how much we liked him. But I don't think you necessarily replace Gabe Davis if he can't go in a game that's supposed to be, weather impacted, potentially rainy situation, maybe more of a run first attack needed on Sunday. This is a really concerning development.
Yeah, a huge development nonetheless. So, Gabe Davis, obviously the 1B to Stephon Diggs 1A in the passing game, but he's also a really good blocker, man. You just mentioned it. You mentioned the weather. It could potentially be a very sloppy game, a rainy game, a game where you need to be able to run the ball, and you could be without one of your better blocking wide receivers. Throw into the fact that Jake Kumerow is dealing with a high ankle sprain, and now it's just kind of, who is that next man up? It could be Khalil Shakir. It could be Isaiah Hodgins from the practice squad. But there's still questions about both of them in terms of blocking. So it's not a great situation for the Bills to be in here. And it's obviously worrisome that this player that you expected to be your breakout star of the year and had a great week 1 against the Rams, 4 for 88 and a score, is dealing with this ankle injury that seems to keep lingering.
Yeah, and I misspoke there. Gabe was limited yesterday, and John Scott from Spectrum Sports put out a video today with what appeared to be a re-aggravation of the injury in practice yesterday, and then we got out to practice today, and he wasn't even dressed. And I think it's the situation where you're not worried about it from a receiving perspective necessarily. You mentioned it. The blocking, you see a huge drop off, most likely with Shakir in the game. He just doesn't have the size or really the physicality yet. And part of it too is just like knowing what your responsibilities are. Subbing in for Gabe Davis is a tough job for any depth receiver because of how much they rely on him as a blocker. I mean, I think I'd say that Gabe Davis as a receiver is probably their best blocker. Kumaro probably a close second. I even think Stephon Diggs does a pretty good job when he's asked to do it. But it's a situation where this is going to be a game where you want to run the ball better. And I don't know if they're necessarily going to be able to lean on any of those options. Isaiah Hodgins, especially considering the fact that I think, things that I heard over the course of the summer was, he made a lot of strides as a receiver, but not so much in the blocking.
Yeah, and you need as many good blockers as possible in this game. And, we're not even addressing the offensive line yet, Matt. We know how much they have struggled this year in terms of blocking. So you're already down some solid blocking there. You might be without Gabe Davis blocking. You have a Baltimore defense that might be, ears pinned back and swarming if it is a weather game where they're going to have to be running the ball a lot, knowing that Josh Allen might be keeping it a lot, knowing that Singletary and knowing the run game woes that this team has had so far.
You look at the rest of the injury report here, and I'm wondering, what stands out to you outside of Davis? That's obviously a huge development. Where do you look at this thing and say, this would be a good game to get one of these guys back?
Well, and he's trending in the right direction. It goes back to the offensive line, Mitch Morse. He was someone that I think is kind of the glue of that unit. He helps kind of maybe hide some of the deficiencies of the other players. I think when he's out there, the left side of the line's a lot better for it. Obviously, Deion Dawkins on his own is fine, but I think he has helped Roger Saffold, especially in that first game when he was out there. I think that it also helps knowing that there's a good chance that they might not have Ryan Bates at right guard, dealing with a concussion and the concussion protocol. So if you have at least Mitch Morse out there, whether it's Questenberry or someone else at right guard, it's going to help him out as well. And then Brown too, he's had his ups and downs, obviously left that game with the heat illness, but I think Morse is maybe the key for me in terms of, boy, it'd be really good to get him back out there based on the weather in this matchup. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I think those are all valid points. Morris, we saw kind of the breakdowns in the middle. I think you fix so much of it just by having the continuity between Morse and Josh Allen. But I want to go to the defensive side of the ball. And the guy that I'm really looking at this week with Jordan Phillips expected to miss the game is Ed Oliver. He has been trending in the right direction now for about a week. Ended up not playing last week. They wanted to, let that high ankle sprain kind of develop or continue to rehab that thing. And I got to say, out of practice, there's still a situation where he lines up to do a rep in warmups in the open portion of the media, and then usually ends up taking the next rep off. And you saw a video of him today with the ankle heavily taped. I don't know if it's a slam dunk that they get him back. And then you talk about, okay, how much are you missing, your firepower up the gut with Jordan Phillips out, potentially Ed Oliver out. I think Tim Settle is, he's getting over that calf injury, but for a big guy, 300 plus pounds, you're probably going to be dealing with the pain of that for the next couple of weeks. And you wonder if he's at 100%. There's just real questions on the interior of that defensive line. And this is the kind of matchup where, the Ravens haven't been running the ball like they usually do in years past. J.K. Dobbins is going to get, he's coming along. You could see him start to maybe break out a little bit more. And then, of course, Lamar Jackson.
Right. So let me just say this first. They've been very beat up at defensive tackle, Matt, but they have fared very well to date. I thought that they stopped Miami's run game and they held them in check. I think Daquan Jones has been a very underrated player for this defense so far in terms of the double teams that he's taken on. The fact that he's opened things up for Matt Milano and the linebackers, he has been outstanding. So the fact that he's been healthy has been huge for this team. But you're right. Other than Jones, it's been like a rotating door of defensive tackles. You have Ed Oliver in week 1. He gets injured and he re-injures that ankle. We haven't seen him since. Jordan Phillips was really good those first few weeks, and now he's going to be out for the next week or so with that. He's listed as week to week, so I don't want to speculate how long exactly, but he's dealing with an injury. We mentioned Tim Settle missing time. So they've had to bring up Brandon Bryant. They've had to bring up different CJ Brewer 1 week, obviously last week. was Prince Emili. They're looking at a guy like Justin Zimmer. They're working him out. So they're obviously a little bit concerned about how much of a hit this defensive tackle position has taken so far this year, but they've held up to date. That said, it just takes, these injuries are going to take their toll in time, in terms of the depth, in terms of the rotation, the amount of snaps that some of these players have to take. So it's definitely worrisome. And real quick, Matt, because it's in the comments here, Tua is down again. He's still laying on the field. He took a sack. He was instantly moving his hand, like clutching his hand. But if it's a hand injury and he's still on the turf, that doesn't really necessarily add up. So I'm not, I don't have the sound on, but he's back and head slammed into the ground again here. And he is down on the field in Cincinnati.
Interesting. I'm following it over on the NFL Jesus site, and it looks like he remained in the game, incomplete on the next play, and they end up having to punt. So he's staying in the game for now. We'll see how this storyline develops and if he is able to come out for the next series. In terms of what the Bills are going through there's storylines from an injury perspective. It feels like we're just making our way through the laundry list, right? The defensive line, the wide receiver position. You mentioned Mitch Morrison, what's going on in that offensive line. Cornerback situation is very interesting. Defensive backs in general. Somebody asked about Jordan Poyer in here. We can talk a little bit about him in a moment. I don't know what's going on in this Dolphins game, but the chat's blowing up. I'm getting text messages all over the place, so I'm not necessarily sure what's happening with Tua. But in the defensive secondary for the Bills, Jordan Poyer probably trending in a really good direction. It's good that he practiced both days in a limited capacity. You figure he gets back into the mix. And then it's a decision between Jaquan Johnson and Damar Hamlin. And it felt like watching the last game back, it was Damar Hamlin more in that Micah Hyde role. So it'll be interesting to see if they choose to keep him in that role or if they want to pair Poyer and Jaquan Johnson. That's going to be a fun thing to watch. And then Dane Jackson is all of a sudden bounced back pretty quickly. He's still in a red non-contact jersey, but if they deem him ready to play, and he said if everything checks out, he'll be ready, then you're looking at probably Kyer Elam, Dane Jackson this game, which is probably a best case scenario, because if not, you're probably going back to Jamarcus Ingram, because I don't know if Xavier Rhodes is going to be up to speed in time, where that he might be available as a depth player, as a depth option. He's a veteran. He's played 10 years in the NFL, but he was talking about like getting into this playbook. It's pretty complicated. He played with Leslie Frazier in Minnesota, but it's something where I'm not expecting a game day role necessary unless it's an emergency for Xavier Rhodes.
Yeah. So first, starting at the safety position, it's good that it looks like Jordan Poyer is trending in the right direction. I think there was even speculation last week that he might play, even though he was speculated to be out that night before he went on the field around 11:30. Looked like he was trying to test things out to a certain extent. So it's good to have him. And again, I go back to the weather, though. If it's going to be sloppy conditions and running the ball, he can absolutely help in run defense. But obviously he's a superstar in terms of patrolling in that secondary. In terms of who starts opposite him, it will be interesting to watch, because I think that Damar Hamlin and Jaquan Johnson both had their moments in that matchup. I think they both played very well. Going back at it, there's maybe one or two plays they'd each like to have back, but how they play this on Sunday is going to be interesting to watch. It might be Hamlin at first, and then they go to Jaquan Johnson. We saw that at training camp, Matt. One guy would go out for a few reps, then they would rotate back and forth. So that might be part of their game plan as well. As for the cornerback position, obviously, you have Kyer Elam back there, Benford out for a few weeks. Dane Jackson, maybe you said best case scenario. And I agree with that. I'm not expecting him on Sunday. The fact that he's even out there practicing is such a great sign. But it might be Ingram. It might be something else. And maybe that's where the sloppy conditions might benefit the Bills. There might not be as many passes down the field in this type of game, these conditions, depending on what it's like. Obviously you and I are talking about the weather now. It's just what the projected weather is. Obviously Sunday could come and it could be completely different. But yeah, the cornerback position is going to be something to watch here going forward. And it'll be interesting to see how quickly Xavier Rhodes can get up to speed. Obviously was Leslie Frazier's last first round pick in Minnesota in 2013, picked late in round one. They were together for that year, and so they have a little bit of a relationship there, but it's a whole defense to learn in a short amount of time.
Did you actually end up seeing this Tua play?
Yeah, he's getting stretchered off right now, Matt. He is on a
Yeah.
stretcher and he's getting wheeled off. So one of the defensive linemen for the Bengals, it didn't look like a hard hit. Just kind of grabbed him and pulled him back to the ground, and it looked like his back and head hit. And as soon as he hit, his hands were like curled, and he was like looking at them. And that's, obviously I don't have audio on. You see Tyreek Hill's really shook up right now. Teddy Bridgewater's coming in.
Oh man, he got slammed, man.
Yeah, but you know what I mean though? It wasn't like a direct hit. Like he wasn't like missiled into it, but he was like the way he was knocked down, he just hit the back and in his head just right. So definitely concerning. Hope that everything is okay with Tua. I know we had a lot of Miami fans in the chat last week, but honestly, you never want to see any kind of quarterback get hurt. Hoping for a speedy recovery for him.
Man, that is just awful, scary stuff. And, it does bring up what happened last week and him exiting the game with what looked at the time like a head injury. I mean, he was wobbling after the play. And I know that they said that it was a back issue, but now you see this play happen and you really start to wonder, all right, is this, any lingering effects from last week? And, him not really going through the customary concussion protocols that the NFL has, in place. I don't know. This whole thing feels a little bit, and we have to get more details in the coming days. And first and foremost, you just hope that Tua is okay, because it's not even about football, right? Like it's the kind of stuff that Josh Allen spoke about recently. Like these guys are human beings too, and you really hope that he's going to be okay. That was a really tough play to watch. All right, let's move to this game a little bit. Coming up here in a couple of days, we were talking about the secondary. What do you think that the Bills offense has to do to be successful against this Baltimore team? Justin Houston has missed both practices this week. He's a vet. I wouldn't imagine that it wouldn't surprise me if he's available come game day. But this is a defense that's given up some pretty big days to offenses. And even last week, I thought at times the Patriots moved the ball pretty effectively. Mac Jones had some really good moments in that game before he got hurt. How do you feel like the Bills are going to approach this, and what do they have to do to be successful against this Baltimore defense?
Yeah, I think obviously the offensive line has to hold up and they have to block better in the run game. I think that they've held up fairly well in terms of pass protection in week 1 and week 2. I thought that because they're so undermanned against Miami that they really did get exposed in pass protection as well. But they up front has to win on Sunday for the Bills to have a chance here, because Josh Allen will still throw the ball in any kind of weather conditions. There's no arguing that. We saw those gusty winds against New England last year, and he was still throwing through that. So some rain, some winds, he'll throw in those conditions, and he needs to be protected. But they have to create those running lanes. The Bills really only had one true positive run play all of last week, and it was that Zach Moss scamper down the sideline where he went untouched. Any other time, there was a Dolphins defender, it felt like, in the backfield as soon as that ball was given to one of the backs, which makes life so difficult for those running backs. So they have to be able to at least show the ability to run. If they can do that, that'll help open things up for Josh Allen in this passing game. I think that's another reason why Miami had a lot of success in that matchup, is they knew, listen, the run game is not going to be effective. We're going to be able to pin our ears back and go after Allen. Send that heat, really make him take the short throws, not give him anything deep. And that will be the game plan for these other defenses until the Bills show that they can run the ball a little bit, mix it up, and really keep you on your heels.
Yeah, and I think I'll be interested to maybe catch up with Roger Saffold tomorrow if I can for the preview, because this is a veteran that they brought in to really help shape things in the run game, right? Like, I mean, Aaron Cromer was billed as this, running game fixer-upper in a lot of ways. He goes out and he gets Roger Saffold to add to the mix. Obviously, they had 4 pieces that remained from last year's team, but you figure that they were going to be a little bit more effective, and they've continued with the model that they used last season before they flipped the deck and went to Devin Singletary. Now, it seemed like last game they might have switched that up a little bit after the early Zach Moss ineffectiveness. They went to Singletary for a big stretch and then brought Moss back later in the game. That could be the way that they go. But I think, to your point, like, they have to be able to establish some threat of the run in this game, and not just with Josh Allen. And you wonder how they do that. Is it continuing to stay with Singletary and banging him in there? Do you get maybe Zach Moss more involved early because of this kind of game? Or do you mess around and maybe give James Cook some opportunities when I think you can make an argument, Ryan, and I know a lot of it came in the fourth quarter against Tennessee Titans. He's looked pretty good as a runner. I think he's the top graded rookie running back according to Pro Football Focus after 3 weeks. Maybe the guy that you just spent a second round draft pick. I remember a fan saying this. I can't remember if it was in the chat or a comment after the fact, but it's like they said that they were sick of the Bills using second round picks on players that end up having a year, a rookie year where they're just not used a ton. And I think you went out and you spent a draft pick in the second round on James Cook. Maybe let him work a little bit. I don't know if this is the game, but you do want to be able to find a way to run the ball.
Yeah, get creative too. Why not get 2 backs in the backfield and then maybe put Cook, start him in the backfield, then have him go out wide. Use Singletary where maybe you think the pass is gonna go to Cook and you throw it to him. He caught 9 balls last week. Getting the backs involved in any capacity, whether it's short passing game, whether it's the running game in general, anything like that to keep the Ravens defense on their toes, backed up a little bit, so maybe they're not sending that extra heat, would be a win for this Bills team on Sunday.
The Ravens are giving up 25.5 a game. Obviously, a big chunk of that is the Miami Dolphins hanging 42 on them and having that quarter. I think this is a secondary that the Bills can have a lot of success against, even without Gabe Davis. I mean, this could probably, in a lot of people's minds, be the Dawson Knox breakout game, right? If Davis can't play, Stephon Diggs is obviously going to get his, but this is the game where you rely on that short to intermediate passing game. Get Dawson Knox involved. Let him, play physical a little bit. Let him try to, have a couple of those angry runs that have made him one of Kyle Brandt's favorite players. And speaking of which, let's have a little sidebar here. What were your thoughts on the Ken Dorsey, the video? Because we haven't had a show since that really went viral. We obviously covered it pretty heavily on the website. I talked about it with Gene and Danger on ESPN Rochester the other day. I had zero problem with it. What were your thoughts? Because there was some people that, were talking about how it was unprofessional and something that maybe you don't want to see from your offensive coordinator.
I had no issues with it either. The only person that maybe could have an issue with it is someone looking at him potentially down the road for a head coaching job. Because when you're a head coach, you have to be a politician. You have to be pretty even keel in terms of how you act and how you behave. And that moment could hurt him in that regard. But if you were a fan watching, if you were a player that saw that, which Josh Allen did, which a lot of the current players did, former players did, why wouldn't you love that? Why wouldn't you be happy to see your offensive coordinator just as upset as you most likely were when you couldn't get up to the line and snap that ball? When you had so many costly mistakes that ended up, costing you the game on Sunday. I like that fire. I like that passion. That's just going to make the players in that locker room love Dorsey even more if that's possible, because they know that he is just as bought into this as each and every one of them is, Matt.
Yeah, and to me, that's the thing. Like, the thing that I talked a little bit about with them was, in this day and age, in 2022, with the prevalence of social media and, the challenges that I think a lot of old school football coaches have in reaching the modern young athlete, I think that there's a level of respect that you get in the locker room when you're able to show that kind of passion and feel that kind of way. In the moment. So, and we know Josh Allen and Ken Dorsey, both super competitive guys. I didn't have a big of an issue with it as some have had, but it is what it is. Let's talk a little bit about Greg Rousseau. He's a guy that I think, like, Bills fans have taken note of the way that he's played early this season, but I don't think people really are grasping the kind of jump that he's taken. And I mean that just from my impressions of dealing with him on a daily basis. There's been such a jump in the maturity aspect, the confidence level that he seems to be displaying on and off the field. That's one of the biggest kind of under the radar storylines that I think we covered in the offseason. But Von Miller's impact on this young pass rusher, a former first round pick, this is a massive development for the Bills. I think it's 3.5 sacks. His pass rush win rate is amongst the higher end in the league when you're talking about edge rushers. And if you go look at this chart, I think it's Seth Waldron put out from ESPN. where his name comes up in the pass rush ring, you'll be surprised to see who he's ahead of on that list.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, going into this week, tied for the league lead in tackles for loss too. So, Greg Rousseau is having a monster year early. That was my main encouraged, worried point following the Miami game. Listen, you lost a tough one, but Greg Rousseau looks the part. Just getting into the backfield, making plays, a sack and a half against Miami. The fact that you can line him up off the edge and on the inside is something that you have to love if you're a defensive coordinator. And he's really fared well when you have lined him up on the inside this year because he's so much stronger than those guards. It feels like he can overpower them, get right into the quarterback's lap, and then clean up on the play. But it speaks to what Von Miller does for this defense in terms of the fact that he's winning a lot on his side as well. And maybe it's not resulting in sacks. I know that's the ultimate production for a lot of the fans, but he is still winning. He's getting a lot of close plays. He's getting some pressures. He's making the quarterback move out of the pocket or maybe move out of his spot. So if you do watch him closely, he's doing great too. But Rousseau, he's taken that next step that you'd hoped when the Bills drafted him in the first round. And I know we're on Rousseau, but oh, by the way, I think Boogie Basham's taken a huge step this year too. So all of a sudden you have that veteran in Von Miller and two young pass rushers all kind of stepping up for your team. That's really encouraging. You hope that from now until January that it's only going to get better and better, because if they're playing at a high level up front, even if that secondary is missing Micah Hyde, which they will be obviously for the rest of the year, that can mask a lot of problems or concerns that you may have on the back end.
Yeah, I think Boogie and Rousseau are both stepping up in a big way, Ryan Talbot. And if you want to step up your tailgate experience, head over to topsmarkets.com and get involved in this sweepstakes to win a tailgate and go kitchen. Falling leaves and crisp weather mean it's Tops' favorite time of the year, tailgate season, and you can win the ultimate tailgate accessory from Tops just by purchasing brands you already love. Now through October 29th, every time you use your Tops Bonus Plus card to purchase participating brands like Pepsi, Campbell's, Smithfield, and so many more, you're automatically entered for a chance to win a tailgate and go kitchen ultimate tailgating experience. For complete details, head over to topsmarkets.com/redzone. This thing's got everything, Ryan. Outdoor cooking setting, food divider compartments, bottle opener, spice rack, paper towel holder. Man, I think we're going to get you one of these before the end of the season, because every time I read off these features, I see it in your face. You're getting excited.
Sign me up. It's funny. We always go down and hang out with my family on the weekend, and my mom had a Tops ad, and sure enough, that was right there, front and center, first page, and I was looking at it there too, and man, it is very nice, Mr. Parrino.
Oof, I like it. Speaking of very nice, the Bills got Deion Dawkins back to practice today. Still dealing with he was listed as a non-COVID illness yesterday, and he said today after practice that he's still dealing with the effects of Miami last week, that heat, and the especially on offense, running 90 plays in that environment. You wonder how much holdover that's going to have for all of these guys as they continue to try to get their bodies right in time, 7 days to go down and play what's likely to be a really physical game against the Baltimore Ravens. And up front, I mean, we talked a little bit about it already. They're a little bit depleted, but I do think historically the Ravens find a way to get pressure. Obviously, they have a really good young linebacker in Patrick Queen that kind of impacts the game at both levels, in coverage and as against the run, and even as a pass rusher. So, I think that the Bills' offensive line, a lot of the headlines have been that the run blocking hasn't been very good. I got to be honest with you, Ryan. At times, the pass blocking hasn't been good as either. And I'll tell you right now, I have some concern. I know that the weather environment was what it was last week, and it's almost like you kind of give most of these guys a pass. Spencer Brown was not very good last week before he left that game.
Yeah, early on he was, getting blown by Ingram and some other players. He was getting pushed back. It was not what you would hope to have seen from your second year right tackle. But I think you raised a great point, Matt. You mentioned the fact that this game in Miami, that they're coming off of 90 plays on offense, and the players that remained in the game, I thought they looked absolutely gassed by the end of it, and rightfully so. You're playing in extremely hot weather. The sun's beaming down on you all day, even when you're on the sidelines. And by the end of it, I didn't think they had much left in the tank Saffold and company. So that's why, again, maybe a return of Mitch Morse would be so big for this team, because he might have that he'll have that extra energy. He wasn't in that matchup. Hopefully the elbow's fine and he'll be able to help that unit out. But that is a huge concern. It's not a big window of time to recuperate from that game. It was very tough conditions, and now you're facing like you said, an extremely physical team in the Baltimore Ravens.
Who do you think has more pressure on them in this game? Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen? And now listen, I present this question knowing that these are probably two of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the league through 3 weeks. They've both been sensational. But obviously we know what happened last week in Miami. That was a tough loss there. We know what happened to the Baltimore Ravens against the Dolphins a couple weeks ago. Who is this game bigger for, I guess, is my question, Lamar or Josh?
I'm going to go with Lamar, and it's not so much on the field. It's the fact that, he is still trying to break the bank, so to speak, with that contract. And he had negotiations with the Ravens. They never agreed at a number. I guess the guaranteed money was a talking point. And for him, he's going against, you mentioned it, another MVP favorite in this game, Matt. If he can go out there and win that game, and it's obviously not Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson, but if Lamar Jackson can be the better quarterback on that day and say, listen, I just beat a team that has a franchise quarterback that's getting paid $258 million. I've shown time and time again that you can win with me. I've gotten better as a passer. I'm dangerous with my legs. What else is there for me to do? You would think that the Ravens, even though Jackson said he didn't want to negotiate in season, they might write him that blank check or up that guaranteed money to try to keep him involved. Now, if he loses games like this to Josh Allen and the Bills and loses to other contenders, maybe that raises a point to Baltimore. They say, listen, we like you. We think you're talented, but are you worth that kind of money, that upper echelon in terms of guarantees? And that might be a sticking point. So, it's a little outside the box, but I think for that reason, maybe I'd go Lamar Jackson. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you, but just to offer a different viewpoint, I do think that the Bills do not want this narrative of inconsistency in the red zone to creep up again. They've been so dynamic on offense. And like they said, none of them were making excuses after the last game. Like there were a lot of elements at play in that Miami game, excuses to be made about why the offense wasn't executing in the red zone. But you add 2 games of a sample size and something already all of a sudden becomes a storyline. And so I think if you're Josh Allen, you're coming into this game potentially without your number 2 weapon in Gabe Davis and a run game that has never shown up for you to this point yet. And you got to figure out a way to make plays consistently against the defense that has given up some big games. So if it's not working at any point in this game, I think that there could be a level of pressure on Josh. And not to mention the fact that I think it was Joe Buscaglia. I saw Mike Giardi give him some love on NFL Network, and rightfully so, found a stat. It's over 80% of the offensive plays that the Bills ran in Miami, Josh Allen was involved in one way or the other in those plays. That is a crazy amount. And this goes to what we talked about after the game. This is not a blueprint for success for this Bills offense. It's to just ask Josh to be this Superman that puts the entire weight of the offense on his back, on his shoulders every week, in it consistently in and out. So I think this has got to be a game where, they get some support from some other key pieces.
Yeah, I love that talking point too, because while Josh Allen is your franchise quarterback, the guy that can win you a game no matter the situation, having him involved at that high of a percentage of plays isn't sustainable over the course of a 17-week season or over the course of the playoffs. You need to have other players chipping in and helping out. So that goes back to our talking point about the run game. It goes back to the fact that the Bills have to be very careful with how much they utilize Allen, because you get dinged up over the course of the season. At one point in that Miami game, they were looking at his hand, and he took some hits, a lot of hits in that game. So you got to protect him as well. And the best way to protect your quarterback is to get help from other players on that offense.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think here. I mentioned Dawson Knox a little bit earlier. What do you think about the potential of Stephon Diggs in this game, even with Davis out of the mix? Because I think he's been so good early on, and I know he made that big play against the Dolphins, and then kind of, I think he had 30-ish yards the rest of the way. But for the most part, for 12 quarters, I'd say maybe 10 of them, he's been just a dominant player, and I expect him to continue that. I mean, Marlon Humphrey is a guy that, when Diggs does play a lot in the slot, could see a little bit of him. Marcus Peters is working his way back to 100% coming off of that injury. I think this is a secondary that Stephon Diggs could have a lot of success against.
Oh yeah, I mean he can have success against any cornerback. He showed that in week 1 against Ramsey. He's shown it in his time in Buffalo and his time in Minnesota. So yeah, he's going to have a lot of opportunities in this game to make plays, and the Bills will be smart about how they use him. If they don't think anything deep is there, they'll use him along the sidelines. They'll get those short yards. They'll use him in the slot. You can utilize Stephon Diggs in so many different ways and pick up yards because of it. So I'm absolutely expecting him to contribute. You mentioned Dawson Knox earlier. He is still on the injury report. Now it's with a back and a hip type of injury. I think it was a foot in week 2 that he was getting looked at. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of dinged up as well. I will say I've been impressed in small doses with Quentin Morris. He made a nice sliding catch in that game. I'm not sitting here saying it's going to be the Quentin Morris game, but you might have to have him step up a little bit more as well. And a guy like Reggie Gilliam that's been catching passes and making plays. The Bills need something from everyone in a matchup like this. And it doesn't get any easier because not too far down the road, you have the Chiefs and you have the Packers. So the Bills need to get right and need to get right quickly.
If you're just joining us, watching us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, thank you. Welcome into the show. I know it is Thursday Night Football. A lot of people are probably tuning in now during halftime. We are waiting for our special guests during halftime. We're going to have Ross Tucker hopefully here in the next few minutes. Who scares you the most of Lamar's weapons? Because that's something interesting in this game to kind of look at. I mean, he doesn't have a ton of them necessarily. I think Devin Duvernay has played really well early on this season. Rashad Bateman has had a couple of explosives. You look at their running backs and, Justice Hill and J.K. Dobbins coming back. I don't think any of those guys really strike fear. But I think for me, it's probably Bateman.
I'm going to go with actually Mark Andrews at tight end. And I will say this. The Bills play tight ends very well. I'm going to cut you off right there.
We're going to go to the man, the myth, the legend, Buffalo Bills legend, that is. He is host of the Ross Tucker podcast and DraftKings NFL analyst, Mr. Ross Tucker. What's up, man? Thank you so much for doing this.
You know what, guys? It is my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. I'm a big fan of what you guys do. Obviously, I have a huge affinity for the Bills. I'm in a hotel room, by the way, in New York State in West Point because I'm doing the Army game on Saturday. I have no idea why my camera looks like it's a little foggy. I don't know if it's my lighting or what. But I got to tell you, I'm in a weird spot right now because I love the Bills, and I was so fired up to talk to you guys about the Bills and about their season and my favorite team I played for. And if you guys have ever heard me anywhere else, I am a happy-go-lucky. I just love life. I love football. I love the Bills. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see. Did you guys see the Tua injury?
Yeah. We did, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really and this is my first time talking about it. I'll talk about it tomorrow on the Ross Tucker football podcast. I'm really angry right now. And I think anyone that loves football probably should be. I don't really believe them that it wasn't a concussion on Sunday. Mm-hmm. I think he had a concussion. You're talking to a guy that had a back surgery when I played for the Bills. It's part of the reason why the Bills ended up cutting me, which still bothers me because I wanted to be there forever. So I know what it's like to have a bad back and back spasms. I also know what it's like to have a concussion. And so 2 thoughts, and I know we're going to talk Bills, but I'm sorry, it's halftime of the game and whatever. second concussion syndrome is a major, major problem. So I am legitimately concerned for Tua Tagovailoa right now, like legitimately concerned about him as a human being more than just a football player. And I'm angry because I love the sport and stuff like what happened Sunday and then Tua getting slammed to the ground tonight and having the fencing posture, it really hurts the sport tremendously. There's a reason why participation in the sport is down. And I'm getting text messages both Sunday and tonight from people that have kids or, they're casual fans and they didn't understand how Tua came back in the game Sunday. And now they watch this again tonight. And it's really bad. So I'm saying all those things to say I'm happy to talk Bills for the rest of halftime. And I'm absolutely happy to come on with both you guys again sometime because I'm familiar with both of your work. I've seen your Twitter handles. I've seen your tweets. I know you guys have a big following on this show. So I'm happy to come on some other time as well. I don't want your awesome listeners to think the way I'm going to be for the next 10 minutes is how I normally am. Because if you hear me anytime, anywhere else, I'm not like this. But I'm like legitimately pissed off right now. Like I'm angry as a former player who loves the sport and wants more people to play it and doesn't want people to have head injuries playing it. So it's amazing because my mindset would have been a total 180 if that didn't just happen to Tua 10 minutes ago or whatever it was. So anyway, I apologize in advance. Ask me anything you want about the Bills. I love that you're sponsored by Topps. I used to shop the crap out of Topps when I lived in Buffalo. That was like the cool thing about Buffalo is, the people knew that I was a player or whatever. And so you go to the Topps like on a Monday, and if you won, they'd be like, hey. And I can remember a couple times we gave up a bunch of sacks and lost, and I'd be like in the milk aisle at Topps, and some grandma would look at me and just be like,
just even the grandmas know. Even the grandmas know.
I'd be like Mildred. Bledsoe held the ball. Okay, what do you want me to do, Mildred? All right, Bledsoe was holding the ball.
That is great. That is great. No, listen. So everything that you just opened with, it's super important. I was just at I coach my son's travel baseball team, and we were just at our like introductory, like get to know you dinner the other night. And one of my players, his older brother, was talking to me about, he couldn't stop asking me football questions, like about Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen and everything like that. And I was like, asked him, like, do you play football? He's like, yeah. But he's like, my mom won't let me play anything but flag. And as somebody that covers a sport, I kind of was like, that's smart play, man. Like just save your body. I see some of these younger players like just absolutely putting their body on the line. Some of these hits that go viral are just absolutely crazy. And, to your point, these are scary moments. I covered the UFC for 5 years. I'm used to seeing, head trauma and like some of these like really dangerous concussion type situations. What we saw tonight, I'm just seeing the replays. It's scary stuff.
I'm a huge believer in flag football. It's funny. I actually mentioned this, I think yesterday on the Ross Tucker podcast. I think what the NFL is doing with the Pro Bowl is genius. Mm-hmm. Everybody I know, most of their kids that are younger, like my kids are 10 and 9. Most of their kids don't play tackle football. They all play flag football, all of them. So flag football is huge. I'm a huge proponent of it. I don't really think, based on the research I've done, I don't think you should play tackle football till 12, 13, 14 at the earliest. So I think what the NFL is doing, I think a lot of people will watch that and be like, oh, that's awesome. Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen are playing flag football just like me. Like, I think the Pro Bowl, I think that will be amazing as a substitute. And I think it is great to play flag football until, you can wait till 14. I mean, the bottom line is it's all about volume of hits to the head over time, right? And I have short arms, and I have a big head, and so I headbutted dudes all the time. So like I'm probably screwed, right? Like I'm not, I'm probably in a bad place. But I didn't start till 6th grade. My parents wouldn't let me play till 6th grade. They were afraid I was going to get hurt. I was like, I'm not going to get hurt. I'm going to hurt them. What are you talking about? But so anyway, I'm glad I didn't start till 6th grade. I would recommend waiting as long as possible. Unlike other sports like lax or whatever, football is very much a height, weight, speed, aggression sport, meaning you're not going to like fall behind by not playing. It's kind of like, do you have the physical ability or not? Lacrosse, if you don't start till 10th grade, or baseball, like that's tough, right? That's a skill sport that you need to really be working on over time. Also, next time I come on the show, it's with Ryan only, because Matt's hair is just outrageous. Like Matt's hair
Always.
Matt's hair is so phenomenal that I hate his guts. Matt, how old are you?
I'm 40.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I just turned 40.
Man, I was going to call you a name that I definitely should not say on your podcast. But
You can say it. Bring it all. I can take it.
It starts with no, I can't even say that. It starts with a C and ends with a sucker. And in between,
I got
I'm
you.
not going to say what it says. But anyway, I don't like people that have great hair like you, Matt. Okay? I don't like that. I prefer Ryan. Okay? His hair's on his chin.
Yeah. That's right.
You're not alone in Bill's.
Don't have to worry about it with me. So, Ross, we were talking about it earlier. What was your opinion on Ken Dorsey's outburst at the end of that game? There were some differing opinions in the media from fans. Obviously, a lot of the players on the team and former Bills players loved it. So, as a former Bills player, what did you think?
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, I don't really understand the negative. The game was over. Like it didn't affect his ability to do his job. He was incredibly frustrated. And by the way, you know how he felt? Like every single Bills player did in that moment. Like every single Bills fan in this moment. We just ran 90-some plays. We had the time of possession for 40 minutes. We're down 6 defensive starters, and we still dominated the game and would have had a chance to kick a field goal to maybe win it. And he was incredibly frustrated. I got to tell you, it's probably why I don't coach. I would lose my mind. Like some of the dumb stuff guys do or some of the mistakes guys make, I would lose my mind. So I was like average at best athletically across the board, but I could play all 5 positions, and I never made a mental mistake. And like mental mistakes like that, to me, they're unacceptable in professional football. Unacceptable when guys make silly or mental mistakes. That was not my problem. My problem was more the physical part of it. So if I was a coach like Dorsey, I'd be the same way. I think it would be almost weird. Like, what if they showed him and it was the exact opposite reaction where he's like, oh, bummer. And I'd be like, what? I would go crazy. I'd be like, what? This guy, like, how is he not losing his mind? And I got to tell you, I don't know if you ever talked to Dorsey, but he's like the calmest dude ever. So I didn't know he had that in him. I was like blown away that he had that in him. I was not expecting that at all. And like in a weird way, because I'm from Reading, Pennsylvania, and it's like my parents, my grandpa's military. I'm like proud of him. I don't know why you shouldn't be proud of someone for freaking out, but I'm like proud of him for flipping out.
All right, we're gonna get you back to this game. I want to ask you one quick thing before we do.
I'm still here. I'm just pulling over my other laptop so I can watch the game. Can you tell I have to talk about this on like 3 radio shows tomorrow and do my podcast at 7 a.m.?
And we promised to get you out, but I wanted to ask you real quick, did you lose any faith or belief in this Bills team based on what happened in Miami on Sunday?
No, I would say if anything, it almost reinforced because they were down 6 defensive starters and they were able to do what they did and dominate the game. So I did not lose any faith in them as a team, but I lost a little bit of faith in their ability to get the home field advantage, number 1 seed. These are the type of games they need to win. Now they're playing Baltimore. I think there's a pretty good chance the Ravens win that game. I think the Ravens are very good. Ravens are at home. I haven't even gotten the update on how many are any of those 6 guys back this week, do we think?
Oliver's still nursing that ankle injury. Dane Jackson's in a red jersey. Poyer's probably trending towards playing.
Yeah, so that's sort of my concern is the Ravens they're a good team, man. Like I can only see 3 teams from the AFC going to the Super Bowl. Bills, Ravens, Chiefs. Those are the 3 teams I can see going there. So now the Bills have to play one of those 3 that I think can go on the road again after they just played that game and they're still down a bunch of guys. So the next thing you know, it's like the Bills could be 2-2 and they can still be 13-4 this year and get home field advantage. And hopefully they do, because I love doing playoff games in Buffalo. It's amazing. But because every time I feel like they do a playoff game in Buffalo, Westwood One has me do the game on the radio, which I love. But it just increases the degree of difficulty, right? Like it just makes it harder for them to get home field advantage, which is very important.
Ross Tucker, host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. I got to say, all of your episodes, I'm a regular listener, but the episodes with Greg Cosell, man, they hit him out of the park every week. I can't go into an NFL weekend without it. So
yeah,
keep it up.
He's amazing. I thought what he said today about the Bills offense being unsustainable with 71 dropbacks for Josh Allen in 90 plays, I thought made a lot of sense to me. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows that if you ever heard me anywhere else, I played for 5 teams. The Bills are my favorite. Love coming on with you guys. Love Bills Mafia. Love your backgrounds, by the way, for both of you. Happy to do this again sometime. And I'm sorry about my 5-minute like TED talk to start the thing. I promise that would have never happened. If anything other than that happened, it wouldn't have happened. So anyway, you guys keep rolling. I'm going to watch second half and root for the Bengals because number 1, I have the Bengals laying 3.5 on the Even Money podcast.
There you
and
go.
Number 2, it would be good for me and the Bills if the Dolphins lose, because again, we need the Bills to win the division, hopefully get home field advantage, so I can maybe even go skiing at Holiday Valley the day before I call a Bills playoff game.
Boom. Ross Tucker, get out of here, buddy. Thanks so much.
See you, dudes. My pleasure.
All right. We're going to close this show down here in a minute. But before we get to our predictions, Ryan Talbot, we got to get to our value home centers keys to the game. I'm going to come up with a little jingle on the spot here. Let's start it off. Your number 1 key for the Bills to win this football game.
You know, I'll flip it a little bit because I've been talking about the offensive line a lot tonight. Containing Lamar Jackson in terms of keeping him in the pocket. That is my key to the game. I will say the Bills in their history with Sean McDermott have done a very nice job of that. I think having Shaq Lawson on this team to kind of talk through some of these younger players, and obviously Von Miller is going to be able to talk to the younger guys too. But Lawson, in terms of what they've done in the past, it has really worked in terms of keeping him from breaking out and having a lot of big runs. He's had a few here and there because he's Lamar Jackson. He's great at it. But I feel like the Bills have done a nice job of containing him. And I think that with these athletic defensive ends, Greg Rousseau, Boogie Basham, having some wily vets like a Shaq Lawson, who maybe doesn't play a lot, but could end up giving a lot of that helpful advice, in Von Miller, I think they can get the job done. What about you, Matt?
My key to the game, don't lose any more starters. I think that's the way I'm going to go. Go into this game with everybody that you can get healthy and try to keep it that way for 4 quarters. Give yourself a good chance to win. And I just think it's about building continuity even within the game, Ryan. Like, I think that's what we saw, the offense maybe be affected by the most on Sunday was the revolving door on the offensive line. It didn't give them an opportunity to build any cohesiveness with Greg Van Roten starting up front, losing Spencer Brown, losing Ryan Bates, then losing Van Roten himself. I mean, it was just too much turnover, and to have consistency and continuity in game is super important. And speaking of continuity, shout out to Value Home Centers, always giving us the consistency with the weekly ad. You can get over there right now. Value fall value days is going on. And man, do they got some deals for you. Check out their weekly ad. You can sign up for their text program as well. I'm going to have it up here in a second here, Ryan Talbot. I'm snoozing here on the read. You could join Value's text program by texting 80692, text value to that number, and you will be entered for exclusive coupons. You'll see their weekly deals and so much more. Head over to Value Home Center, valuehomecenters.com for more information. All right, Ryan Talbot, prediction time.
I almost agree with Ross that this is a game that the Bills could, well, he's saying that there's a chance they could lose. I agree with him in that. They could lose this game, but I actually have the Bills winning it. It's 24-20. It's a close game for the Bills. That's one big knock that's been on this team. Weather conditions kind of keep the scoring low in this one, but the Bills do enough to pull out a win. And a lot of it's because of the defensive front keeping Lamar Jackson contained.
I'm going to go Bills 27, Ravens 25. It's going to be a very close game. I think the weather is good, could play a factor. I'm giving this prediction based on the fact that I don't think it's going to be an absolute monsoon or just crazy atmosphere. Probably take 7 to 10 points off each team, but I just think that the Bills are going to be able to execute a little bit better and more consistently against this Ravens defense than the Ravens will be able to against the Bills defense that has already set the blueprint for playing Lamar. Now, I will say this, Lamar has changed dramatically this season. And actually John Harbaugh talked about it this week, that it was a point of emphasis this offseason. They wanted to make him more effective from the pocket. He's been one of the best pocket passers in the NFL through the first 3 weeks. But if the weather is a factor, like you mentioned earlier in the show, I lean on Josh Allen's ability to play in the elements a little bit more. I think it'll turn Lamar Jackson almost into a runner, which he hasn't been very successful in the 2 meaningful games he played against the Bills. I don't count that game he went in for Joe Flacco. He's had 74 total yards rushing in those 2 games. I think the Bills continue to follow that blueprint. They get a big W to get back off the schneid. And we'll see where things stand. I'm heading to Baltimore, a little family vacay before the game on Sunday. So this is our lone pregame episode of the week. We will be back with you on Sunday when we have the postgame edition, right?
Yeah, looking forward to it, Matt. Hopefully for the Bills Mafia with some good news to report after that one.
All right, ready to serve fan favorites? Let Tops do all the work for your game day and tailgating spreads. Perfect for game day or any day. Visit Tops' Carryout Cafe. Hot to go fresh large cheese and pep pizzas, $14. Jumbo chicken wings, 10 count, $14. The legendary Tops breakfast pizza, large, $20. I think Ryan's going to have 2 on Sunday. Pizza or taco log, 6 count, $7.69. Baby back rib sections, $5.99 a pound, plus subs, sandwiches, wraps, apps, sides, and so much more. Visit topsmarkets.com/redzone for the complete menu of ready to enjoy fan favorites. He's Ryan Talbot. I'm Matt Parrino.